Alright, hello, and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today we got a mixed bag again, so I just want to first of all start off by saying this purge from weak hands to strong hands is almost complete. We are incredibly close to the bottom, and although it feels very doom and gloom at the moment, this is exactly how it feels to be near the bottom. It does feel like everything is over, the party is completely dead, but we are incredibly close to a shift in sentiment and a shift in trend, believe me. Of course, the FTX scandal is still fresh in everyone's minds. Da Vinci pointed out something very interesting here. He says if he lost $100,000 a day for 100 years, he would have still only lost around a third of what SBF managed to lose. The amount of money lost here was absolutely vast. The WEF has removed its webpage about FTX from its website, so that's not really surprising that they want to cover their tracks. The chairman of the SEC, Gary Gensler, who has blocked a Bitcoin ETF for years under the guise of protecting investors from volatility, had very close contact and many meetings and personal ties with FTX. What is his job again? Well, his job allegedly is to protect investors, but quite clearly there's something a bit more sinister going on here. People seem more outraged at SBF and FTX than at Powell engineering one of the greatest periods of wealth destruction this year in history. People have become incredibly short-sighted. People are kicking off about this FTX blow up and they're really upset, and obviously, you know, my heart goes out to those affected by it, but it has blown my mind the number of people that had their entire net worth kept on not only an exchange but on one single exchange. If you're going to keep your money on an exchange, you better spread it out over multiple exchanges, right? Or make sure you're only using less than 10% of your actual wealth. JP Morgan has pointed out quite rightly that all of the recent collapses in crypto ecosystems have been from centralized players and not from decentralized protocols such as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not the problem here, everything else is, remember. I just want to pause here very briefly and say, look, do you want me to cover FTX more? I feel like I haven't really given a great deal of energy to this. I have seen plenty of exchanges blow up, be hacked. I've seen plenty of funds go bankrupt and insolvent. This is nothing really new to me. This is kind of exactly what you'd expect to happen near the bottom of a bear market. I've personally been focused in on price because that's what matters. That's what matters to me, at least, as a trader. I don't really care about FTX or any of these exchanges, right? I cold store my crypto. I don't focus massively on altcoins, and if you've been watching the channel, you'll know this. I just want price. I want to find this bottom and I want to get underneath it, and I want to extract as much money from this coming bull run as possible. That's what matters to me. But as a content creator, if you enjoy the rabbit holes, if you want to see me cover and put more energy into FTX, put it in the comments and I will endeavor to do so. And before we move on, I just want to caution against something I've written here, chart thinking. I'm going to hop into a Bitcoin chart as an example just before we move on. The point I want to make here is I want to caution against a type of thinking when it comes to charts. If you are the sort of person that says you look at this chart, or any chart, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin, any chart at all. If you look at this chart, for example, and you're the sort of person that says we are going to 12K, we are going to 14K, we're going to 20, 25, whatever the number is, okay? You can't be saying things like we are going. You don't know, okay? I want to really caution against this type of thinking of things that are certain. Nobody knows, up, down, left, right, or in circles. Nobody knows, okay? How you should be thinking as a trader, as an investor, is you want to start by saying, I know that I don't know. To have an expectation, but to understand anything can happen. But I want to stress, when I say things like I think this low will hold, that is I think, that is not I know, okay? I never speak with conviction about these charts. I have my expectation. I have these ideas, but I really want to caution against speaking with conviction about something with which you cannot have conviction of. In other news, Apple is building its own metaverse. Make of that what you will. I've got a really long thread here, which I'm not going to go into. The FASB ruling is a pretty big deal for Bitcoin. I'm just going to breeze through maybe 2 or 3 of these slides. You can go and read this in your own time. The FASB is basically an official accounting rule maker, okay? That's the first thing you need to know. The point he makes here is that Bitcoin, under its previous accounting standard, if you added it onto your balance sheet as a company, like MicroStrategy has, then say you added $100,000 of Bitcoin to your treasury. If the price of Bitcoin fell by 50%, you would obviously have $50,000 worth of Bitcoin, and therefore you would have to report this as a loss. However, under this old style of accounting, when the price of Bitcoin recovers back to your $100,000 value, there was like a glitch in this matrix, so to speak, that says you are not allowed to then readjust what you're holding back up to 100,000 you first had to sell that Bitcoin and realize a capital gain or loss, and then you could add it back to your balance sheet, which of course is highly inefficient. So what this led to was companies like MicroStrategy having big losses that then, when they were largely recovered via averaging down and prices bouncing back, were still being reported as massive losses. And then they would have to add a footnote to say, oh, by the way, this is just the way it's reported, but it's not as bad as it seems. But what actually ended up happening was the media picked out this as the headlines and ignored this. Anyway, fast forward to the good news. What we have seen is this old accounting standard has been updated. What this means is now, quite logically, if you buy 100K's worth of Bitcoin and add it to your balance sheet and the price falls 50%, when it then recovers back to 100,000, you're free to report that as being back to even, instead of having to continue to hold a loss on your balance sheet despite not having an actual loss. By pure coincidence, I'm sure, the accounting standards have now been updated so that corporate treasuries can add Bitcoin without the fear of having their balance sheet tarnished. So that's very bullish, and I like to see this. Bitcoin hardware wallet made by Jack Dorsey is going to be made in Austin, Texas. So that's great. And if there's ever been a time to custody your own keys and take true ownership of your own crypto, now would be it, right? Crypto.com are telling us that they hold customer assets in a 1-to-1 ratio, which will be demonstrated in an audited proof of reserves. So that will be interesting. It doesn't really change the fact that you should still hold your own keys and hold your own crypto on a cold wallet, though. Bitcoin Cash could be legal tender in St. Kitts and Nevis by March of 2023. It's interesting that they chose Bitcoin Cash, not Bitcoin. That's very curious to me. And if you go down in the comments, it's also curious to a lot of people. It doesn't make any sense. But news is news, adoption is adoption. The Binance CEO, CZ, has said 4 or 5 firms have reached out to us to help with this industry recovery fund, where they might be looking to put a bottom underneath the Bitcoin price and bail out the people that were affected by the FTX collapse. I personally don't like this as an idea. I'm not saying I don't want people to be reimbursed, but what I am saying is this feels a lot like a central bank bailout to me. Bitcoin doesn't need that, okay? If people get wrecked in this industry, that's of course sad. But Bitcoin is a self-healing, self-repairing network. Bitcoin doesn't care. Bitcoin will recover. And whilst this could be bullish for price, whilst they could put a floor under the price, whilst we could see this help those affected by the FTX crash, Bitcoin is not a bank. Remember, the whole point of Bitcoin is that we do not need banks. So acting like a central bank and stepping in to bail out an industry after a collapse is somewhat unsettling to me. Do you pay attention to volume? Because when we take a look at this chart here, you will see that the amount of volume we have had has only ever showed up marking major events for the Bitcoin price. People wanting capitulation a week or two ago may well have had it. And whilst we haven't hit those 14 and 12K and 10K numbers that many people want, there's nothing to say, especially when you look at the volume profile, that that wasn't it. Be open to those lows holding. Capacity utilization and Fed funds rate suggests we are entering a rate plateau period and possibly a rate cut by Q2 of 2023. All-time high in stocks during the rate plateau period. And when we hop into these charts here, you can see that the US CPI in green here is set to roll over. Capacity utilization is also set to roll over. Capacity utilization in green here, as you can see, set to top right as we get the rate plateau in the Fed funds rate. If you don't know what capacity utilization is, it is very basically the amount that's being produced relative to the amount that could be produced. The Chinese stock market just saw a McKellen summation get triggered. Is the economy closer to reopening than most believe? It's quite possible that we could see the HSI start to recover. Just before I hop into the charts, I posted this on Twitter. Go ahead and follow me there. I'm going to try to be a bit better about posting these positions as and when I get into them, so you don't have to wait for the YouTube video the following day. Although, as a swing trader that only uses daily candles and daily closes, it doesn't really matter. It's not like it's time sensitive to the point of you needed to see it on the very minute it's released. But as long as you can see it within a 24-hour period, it shouldn't affect it too much. Random long, after I wrote this, I realized kind of a poor choice of words. Okay, random in terms of what I meant was geo is quite random relative to my watch list. I did not mean I just stabbed randomly at a long. There was a good technical reason for this. I'll hop into the charts and show you in a minute. Starting off as we must with the dollar. The dollar continues to break down. Not even got a dead cat bounce out of here yet. I'm noticing this actually. Let me extend this out. Something like this. Are we just going to come down to here? 101? Is that possible? I would have thought we had to chop around a bit first and then make our way down. That remains to be seen for now. But likely at some point we are going to touch this blue line, so be interested to see what happens there. Hop into the yields chart, and you can see here the chart of truth, the 10-year yield, also rolling over. This is a very good look for risk assets. The Bitcoin chart, as I kind of already touched on earlier, all the while we're above this low, we should expect a 60-day cycle to unfold. Now, that's not to say it couldn't go sideways, not to say it couldn't go down, but it could go up too. And just keep that in mind that, yeah, a couple of $1,000, $1,500 down, take out this white line here. That should open up all the bearish stuff. But we're only $1,500 or so, think a little bit less than that, away from clearing this blue line. And once we do that, of course, that's majorly significant for the Bitcoin price, because that will bring into play this Wyckoff spring. Now, is this what it's going to look like? I'm going to keep bringing that down until we crack this. I'll abandon this thesis if we take out that low, the white line I showed on the prior chart. We lose that low here, then we'll abandon the Wyckoff spring because it's not behaving like a Wyckoff spring. But like I said, don't underestimate the ability of Bitcoin just to hop up above, 17, 18,000 and then start to play out just like we expect to see here. MATIC continues to do MATIC things, so let it do what it's going to do. Zcash, I'm starting to think, is this a bear flag? Look, it could go either way, couldn't it? This could be a bear flag before a move lower if Bitcoin's going to roll over. But if Bitcoin's going to recover, then as I've said many, many times, I'll be hopping in here and adding this to a longer term account. I have tucked some of these away because I like the coin. I've made a video on that. You can go and check that out if you want to see it. But wholly speaking, I'm not an altcoin type of person. XRP is making its way up to this red line, so watching this eagerly. Once we get above this red line, I'll add my position back and we'll be back to this sort of neutral, but I don't have a current position. If you've been following the channel, you already know that. Ethereum, kind of interesting, kind of not. Certainly not much of a setup here as far as I can see. You could argue breakout, retest, resumption of this dotted line. I really want to see Bitcoin recover, and I think perhaps I would be interested in longing above this red line. That remains to be seen for now. Gold just continues to press up, and that is because the dollar continues to fall off a cliff. So some level of pullback due at some point, right? But for now, long and strong, continue to push. Oil, I don't like this price action from oil. I really wanted to see it make its way up to high 90s to 100 to entertain this big short. Perhaps it's going to come later. Still kind of sideways. It's been a really weird chart, but if I don't have a good read on it, which I don't at the moment, then there's no point trading it, right? So this still remains an idea if we can get up to 100, but for now, just kind of keeping an eye from the side. Here's Apple, not really responding to its metaverse news, but perhaps in a longer term account will continue to push this. And the same is true of Tesla, continue to push this in longer term accounts. I'm still keeping a close eye on these Bitcoin related equities. I don't have Marathon or Riot yet. I will make sure I notify you when I do. Looking to add those. I've started to average into MicroStrategy, but I want to see this start to turn. I want to see Bitcoin confirm that Wyckoff spring before I get full exposure, and I won't really tolerate price breaking below these lows back here. Same pretty much is true of Coinbase. I started to nibble at this, but I would have been confident buying the swing low here if Bitcoin had recovered its spring, but as it hasn't yet, then there's no telling what's going to happen here. So we've got to play patient, we've got to stop below the low, and that's fine. That's enough risk for that trade for now. I did flag this as a trade idea, but I also said I'm not going to take it. But you can see that breakout, retest, resumption appears to be occurring here for the FTSE 100. So that was a trade idea. You take it or leave it. The VIX continuing to push down. So this line is kind of a bit ugly at the moment. I'm not really sure where to draw this. But overall, I think if we can continue to press down here, then we can take the long out of here. And that would kind of make sense. Dow Jones getting a little bit of a pullback yesterday, but I've checked the futures this morning and they're up. So I'd imagine this is going to continue its little melt up thing if that's going to happen. It seems to have broken out of this quite comfortably. The Nasdaq as well, I noticed a little bit of resistance here, but that kind of makes sense given we had this big trend line. Obviously, we've got the final hurdle to clear for the Nasdaq up here. So little way to go yet, but long and strong, continue to push. Pretty much the same story for the S&P. So all the while we're above this low, happy days, got to let this cycle unfold. We could get some annoying situation where it turns out that that was the cycle low or this was a really early one. Just don't know at the moment, but we will know fairly soon. For now, I'm making the assumption this is the cycle low. Therefore, the next one's not due until January. So that remains to be seen. We'll see how high up we can go and see if we can get some sort of a trend line breakdown. Something like this, perhaps. Trend line breakdown to exit the trade as we did on this move up here. So one day at a time. For now, long and strong, continue to push, see what we can get out of the market. If you found value here today, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're not already, turn those notifications on if you want to get up-to-date notifications for when I modify my positions as a professional swing trader. throw down in the comments if there's anything you want to see from me, or if you want me to cover that FTX drama in more detail. If you like the rabbit hole content, I can make more rabbit hole content. Otherwise, I'm going to keep doing this. In the meantime, all the best from me. Look after yourselves. Take care. Cheers. Bye. Alright, hello, and this is Camel from the future. I completely forgot to cover Geo, so here I am, going over it. This is a new position for me. I've added it to momentum stocks down the bottom of the watch list. So we had this little box, we've had a breakout. Now, I tried to buy this into the close with the assumption that we would be breaking out of here and looking for new highs. I have a video right here called how to find and trade momentum stocks. So if you want to go and see that, go and see that. That talks about buying stocks at all-time highs, a bit of an abstract concept, but it also shows this sort of box strategy, breakout of a box strategy. It works pretty well. I see no reason why. I mean, obviously, if it rolls over and I get stopped out, then that's a reason. But I would think this is going to open up pretty strong over the coming days, and then the target is like way up here. So one day at a time. But this is a new position. I've added this. If I flick on, and I'm not an indicators guy, as you know, but if I flick on a super guppy, you'll see that it's flipped green, it's above its 200-day moving average, and now it's probably looking to start what I would imagine is going to be a big uptrend. We need to get above this line here to be really certain that the trend is going to continue. But for now, pretty decent risk reward, especially if it's going to get out and achieve like one of these big stage 2 rallies. So anyway, that's that. Geo Group added long and strong, continue to push.